Hi, this is Bob Markovich. Welcome to episode number 6 of Life of Leadership in Lorain County. My guest today is going to be Ben Norton. Ben Norton is president and CEO of Buckeye Community Bank, and we'll begin our discussion with him after I just give a quick shout out to my sponsors. First of all, BCT Alarms. Brian Jankowski has owned and operated BCT Alarms for a couple of decades at this point. The unique thing that I like about the alarm systems, the way they are today, is everything you can control everything from your cell phone. So give Brian a call if you want to do some really neat things with your security system. 877-215-0763. I also want to thank WOBL and WDLW. So WOBL AM 1320 and 107.7 FM. And WDLW AM 1380 and 98.9 FM. That's Renee and Gary Tillett. Live in Lorain County. I know Gary's from Elyria. So it's great to support local businesses, and I support the Cool Cat and Gold Country. And I think our guest does too. Ben Norton, I've heard you advertise a few times on WOBL, WDLW.
Yes, Bob, thanks for inviting me to be on here. Yeah, we utilize the local radio station WOBL and WDLW for part of our marketing campaigns. I've been interviewed on there at least once, and they even have my I even have done a couple voice ads, which it's pretty scary when you're driving home and you hear yourself on the radio.
Yeah, it does. You're hearing voices, and the voice is yours, right?
Yeah, you remember that voice is just inside my head. When I hear it coming from my car speakers, that's a different story.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, that's for everybody listening and watching. We could go down that path. Ben and I have had a few discussions about what actually takes place inside of our heads during the course of the day, and sometimes it can be scary.
Right.
So yeah, let's kick it off. So you're the president and CEO of Buckeye Community Bank. What did you do prior to taking over the controls?
Well, I started my career after I graduated from college. I started my career in banking. I started as a teller at one of the banks in Lorain County, which was Lorain County Bank, which is now part of the Huntington National Bank family. But I started out as a teller, worked my way up through the customer service rep, assistant manager, floating manager. Then I had an opportunity to move over to the credit area where I did credit analysis and filing and maintaining the credit files. And while I was doing when I started out as a teller, after about the first month, I decided that if I wanted to stay in banking, I needed to get an advanced degree. So I started going to night school to get an MBA. After I achieved my MBA, I wanted to move into lending, and there was no lending opportunities at that point in time. So I took a job out at the Ohio Bank, which is in Findlay, Ohio. I worked out in Findlay for several years as a commercial loan officer. Then I had the opportunity to help them establish a branch down in the Columbus market. So I headed down to Columbus for a couple of years with the Ohio Bank. And then I moved on to move back to the area to eventually the Ohio Bank became Sky Bank, which became Huntington Bank. So you may notice a theme here about Huntington Bank following me around. So I moved back to this part of the state. I worked at EST Bank in Elyria, which became part of First Merit, which later became part of Huntington. And then I decided that, okay, I've worked at small banks, I've worked at regional banks. Let's see what it's like to work at a large bank. And I went over to National City. I spent about a year or so at National City and their business services group. And I realized that being in a large bank was not where I wanted to be. About that time, I was approached by Billy Rowland, who was looking at starting up a bank in Lorain County that would serve the small and medium-sized businesses. He found that there was a lack of that banking service to those types of businesses when First Merit bought Premier Bank. Premier Bank was Lorain County Bank. Lorain County Bank changed its name to Premier Bank. When that happened, there were only two local banks left in Lorain County, and Billy Rowland thought that those banks did not serve the small and medium-sized businesses appropriately. So in October of 1999, Buckeye Bank received its charter and opened its doors. And I was on board at that point in time as the senior lender, as well as the chief credit analyst, and a couple other hats that I wore. I have a funny story about my first experience with regulators. Was we opened our doors in October. In November, the regulators showed up at our door and said, "What's your Y2K plan?" I said, it probably would have been better if you asked me this in August, not 45 days away from the event where planes were going to fall from the sky and the banking system was going to collapse and there was going to be no water. Well, that was the wrong answer. So I put together a Y2K plan that was satisfactory for the regulators. So moving on from, or being at Buckeye since 1999, I moved through the ranks of a number of different positions, but always had a focus on lending and serving the client. Eventually, I moved up into the chief operating officer position. That was the position I held immediately before I became president and CEO of the bank. Once Bruce Stevens, the previous president and CEO, retired, the board said it was natural for me to move into the president spot with my experience, not only at Buckeye Bank, but at other banks as well. And that's how I ended up in this chair.
So when you were a student at Toledo, right? Toledo Rockets, was your focus to graduate and become go into the banking field?
Well, when I originally started at Toledo, I wanted to be an electrical engineer, and so I spent about 3 years in engineering and found that by the time I got to the end of my third year, it really wasn't where my passion lied. So I decided I needed to find something to graduate with. So I looked at what other programs were available that I could parlay a lot of the classes that I had already taken, and it seemed that business was an easy fit. And plus, it gave me another year and a half of undergrad education that allowed me to enjoy all the fun that occurs when you're an undergrad. So as I was in the business classes, I had gravitated toward finance and econ, and one of my professors taught a banking class that I found to be really interesting, and I just kind of gravitated towards banking, and he made banking sound exciting. So when I graduated from college in 1989, that was when a mild recession was going on, and there were not a lot of jobs out there. And so that's how I ended up in banking, is that it was an area that I liked it. And even though being a teller is not, it is not what I had studied to do at college, it got my foot in the door. And, the big thing with banking is it's a people business. A lot of people think that it's a number business, but the reality is that you're dealing with at least one of the two or three most important things to most people. And the most important things are health, family, and money in most cases. And, banking is the money aspect of it. And if we can put someone's mind at ease about their money, then their health and their family life will probably be a little bit simpler, or at least they can focus on those and not have to worry about the money aspect of it.
Very good. So you grew up in Lorain County, right?
Yeah, I grew up in Lorain, proud graduate of Lorain High School, Lorain Steelman. There's a whole another story about all the schools I went to that no longer exist. But the whole scorched earth story gets a little bit old. But I can go into that if you want to hear the abbreviated version.
Sure.
Grew up on the east side of Lorraine, went to Jane Lindsay School. That's now a senior center. Went to junior high school at Longfellow Junior High. That's been torn down and another one built. And then I went to Lorraine High over on Washington Avenue, and that's been torn down. And now Lorraine High has since been moved to where Admiral King was when I was growing up.
Right on. Yeah. So,
the geography of Lorraine.
So, who is there anybody out? You mentioned Billy Rowland. I don't know what kind of relationship you had with Billy Rowland, but he is definitely deep in a Lorain County guy. But who were your mentors growing up or in college that helped you pave the way and understand leadership the way you understand it today?
I've had a lot of great leaders that I've been able to follow, and I've picked up a number of different things from them. One of my earlier experiences in leadership was that well, this goes way back, but I had a paper route, and I had to find people to help me on my paper route when either that's in the old days when you carried newspapers, 5 miles through the snow, both uphill, both directions, year round. But I had to basically hire neighbor kids to help me with my paper route. Also in the summer, I started my own little lawn mowing business, so I had to hire neighborhood kids to help me with that as well. When I was in college, I helped start a fraternity at the University of Toledo, and through that process, I was the third president of that fraternity. As we got that off the ground, I was the first president after we received our charter. And again, as I went through all those different had all those different responsibilities, I found that dealing with people and getting people on board with you to do the things that they probably really don't want to do, but they need to do, and showing them that I was not above to rolling up my sleeves and getting dirty with them when it came to doing all those sorts of things was how I started to develop my leadership skills. Also, I had a great leader in both my grandfathers and also my father. My one grandfather was a principal in Lorraine at Irving School, and then my other grandfather was the president of Lorraine Products. So I got to know them. They both passed away when I was in my teens, so I did get to spend some time with them and find out how they thought and how they either led the school or led the business. And then my father was the human resource manager of Lorraine Products for a number of years. So I got to observe him and hear his stories of how he functioned in that role. In my business career, I've had some really good bosses, like everybody, and I've had some bosses that would not be considered really good. And when you're in that position, you need to when you're in the position when you don't think your boss is the greatest, you need to make some decisions, and that's either manage up or manage out. And some instances I managed out, some instances I managed up.
What newspaper
So
did you?
that's a really long story without giving you any answer.
Well, you gave me your grandfathers and your dad. You gave me some good answers of who mentored you. But what newspaper did you deliver?
The Lorraine Journal.
The Lorraine Journal. All
Yeah, and
right.
that was back in the day when you had to buy your paper out from the old paper boy and sell your paper out to the new paper to the person that you were moving it to. And when you had to go around and collect every week.
Yeah, so I personally I delivered the Cleveland Press, if you remember the Cleveland Press.
Okay. Yep. That's featured in Rocky Horror Picture Show.
Is it really? I never saw I never saw Rocky Horror Picture
All
Show.
right. See, I have a lot of useless information just bouncing around.
That's fine. That's fine. So you had some entrepreneurship growing up then, because right, you said you started a lawn business. You also had to buy your paper route and then sell the paper route. So you got some experience being an entrepreneur growing up, huh?
Right. Right. And, people think that banking is not an entrepreneurial business, but we deal with entrepreneurs every day. I mean, and we get to hear some really great stories. And there's always, and it's just always amazing how people find a niche and find a way to make that work for them and their family and their employees and their clients.
Yeah. So when I hear this, I see you being a key component to the success of a lot of small businesses in Lorain County, because they come to you for their banking needs. You're taking care of them and you're helping them become the businesses that they're becoming, right?
Correct. Yeah, I mean, when I've mentioned to my team here several times, we sometimes get so caught up in the process of banking and dotting the i's and crossing the t's that I remind our team we have um, monthly staff meetings. I always remind my team of I pick a business and say, okay, here's a business that we work on. For example, um, we have a company called Stripmatic, which is located in Cleveland that makes parts on the third tier of the automotive industry. They make parts for or one of their biggest. They make parts for SUVs and light pickup trucks. So I point out to my team that every time that there's an F-150 that goes down the road, there's a part from one of our clients that's in that truck, and that if we don't do our job, they can't do their job, and then that truck can't be built appropriately. So it's very important that we do all that, but not get so caught up in the day to day. Oh, we have to move this piece of paper and things like that. So, it's really gratifying and fulfilling to know that you're somewhere along in that supply chain. Again, if it wasn't for us, could they find someone else to do it? I don't know. I most likely, but it's it's very gratifying to know that you're helping out a number of businesses, and that you're adding value and strengthening the community because you're allowing them to hire people. You're allowing um, who they're selling the part to hire people. You're allowing the big automotive manufacturers to hire people. So all on that lines, Little Buckeye Community Bank is part of that process.
And that I have a question based on that. So community bank is in your name, Buckeye Community Bank. And is there a special reason? Is there a banking reason why that's in there, or just because you want to welcome the community?
We look at it's because we want to remind everybody that we are a community bank and that we're here to support the community. And the community is, we define our community as the small and medium sized businesses in Lorain County, in Western Cuyahoga County, in Erie County, down into Medina County. So as opposed to um, some community banks that are very retail oriented, we're very much focused on serving the small and medium business community, and that is the community that we're focused on.
And was that the vision of Billy Rowland? I mean, is Billy the actual one that started the bank, went and got the charter? I mean, talk to me a little bit about that.
Yeah, that process consisted of primarily Billy, and he got together with 5 or 6 other like-minded individuals in the county that he knew that also felt that there was a gap in the service that the small, medium-sized businesses were getting from the local banks and the large banks out of Cleveland, and wanted a bank where decisions were made locally. So he found these other folks that were committed like he was to serving that niche that they felt was underserved. And we realized that our plan has never been to put branches up, but to serve our clients from one central location. And we do that. Originally, we did that through a courier service. We still offer our courier service, but now as technology continues to evolve, we also have the remote deposit products. We have lockbox. We have all the different deposit services, and I like it best when the lending officers are not in the office because I know they're out seeing their clients and helping our clients grow and serve the community that we're in.
So one location, and what's that location? Where are you
Uh,
located?
we're located at 105 Sheffield Center. That's on route. For those who may not know that address, if you think about where the May Company used to be, and if that's too far back, we're in the same shopping plaza as the Apple's grocery store and the Marks over on Route 254.
There used to be a Januzzi's shoe store in that plaza too. I remember that growing up.
Yep, that building is still there. Now it's part of now the county owns that and runs one of their service agencies out of there.
Gotcha. So what life lessons have you learned because of your position at the bank?
Well, looking at myself is that I always thought I was a patient person, but I realized that I'm really not that patient, and that's something that I have to continue to work on. I've learned that everybody moves at their own pace, and it's up to me as a leader to make sure that their pace is a pace that I can live with, and that will get the job done. Some of the other that's the primary life lesson that I focus on every day. The other thing is that communication's key. You have to have that. Life happens one conversation at a time, and normally the life and the results that you want are at the other end of a difficult conversation. So you can't be afraid to have those difficult conversations, even though it's easy to fall into the trap of, oh, if I avoid that, it will just go away. But in most cases, it doesn't. So you have to have those conversations, and you have to have the conversations in a positive manner, to where and also allow the other person to speak their piece on it, because everybody has their own frame of reference, and it's just getting that frame of reference aligned so everyone can move forward towards a mutual goal of success.
Yeah. So I love that. I've never heard that before. Life happens one conversation at a time. I wrote that. I wrote that down. I love that. So talk. Because sometimes we could have conversations, and we may not be connecting. So how do you move from the conversation to the connecting, so that you're really connecting with those people that you're having a conversation with?
That the method I use is that I repeat back what the person tells me, and I usually don't use their words. I translate it into my words to make sure that we're both on the same page. And I also ask numerous times if they'll repeat back to me what they heard me say. And what I look for in that is if they say the exact same words, then I realize they probably were not listening, or they haven't internalized what we're trying to get at. So we have to keep having that conversation and keep drilling down into it so we can get to words that both of us understand. And because that's the biggest challenge in any job, is everybody, even though my team members and I are in the same business, we can speak a different language at times, and that's based on our frame of reference and where we've come from. So it's just keep. It sounds boring and it sounds like a lot of work, but you just have to keep repeating and keep changing the words, but you still need to get to the same. You need to get to that end result, and sometimes you you can get there quickly, and other times you have to have those conversations more than once.
And you're still having communication and discussions with business owners too, right? You're not just managing the group of people. You're involved in meetings as well.
Yes, I really enjoy going out and meeting the business owners and hearing what their story is. And my favorite part of when I go out and see a business owner is what is going on a tour of their facility with them. That then you can really see how things work. And since I'm not in the technical aspects of the lending as much as I used to be, I can really focus on how the business owner interacts with the employees and get a feel of what their culture is, and to get a feel of, if this is sustainable. If yeah, if I'm on a tour with somebody and the business owner seems, or says some talks to everybody they walks by, and people don't turn their eyes or turn their heads when that business owner walks by. I know, my experience has shown me that that's probably a pretty good place to work, and that the folks are committed to making sure the business is a success. So those are and I have a great staff that do that as well, but they also focus on the numbers. The numbers, anybody can look at numbers. It's, what makes the business tick. It's not necessarily what the numbers are.
So you kind of go through a mental checklist as you're walking through the plant or the business, wherever it is that you're at, and you're observing and just trying to get a feel for the company, like you said, from a cultural standpoint, right?
Correct. Yeah, that's a little squishy, I realize, but I can usually, people can make numbers. Um, some businesses can turn out really great numbers, but have a really poor culture, and other businesses may not be turning out the numbers, but they're poised to do that. So, there's there's two different ways to look at that, and there's two different ways to approach that, or there's multiple ways to approach that, but there's different conversations that need to be held with the business owners in those situations. Some can be really technical, and some can be more esoteric.
Okay, so leads me to another question. So you're observing these businesses, you're seeing successful businesses, you're taking a look at your life, you're judging, is Ben Norton successful? How do you define success? What would be your definition of success?
I define success of, what I do is I set goals, and I define success of the process, or of meeting those goals, and then I dig a little deeper on that and look at what the process I use to meet those goals, and to see if that's repeatable and sustainable. Sometimes goals, I don't meet my goals, but I learn a lot through the failure that achieves by not meeting those goals. And sometimes the goals I set for myself are totally unrealistic, that I didn't realize that when I started. And other times the goals I've set for myself are are too low of a bar, and I need to up my game in those instances. I meet the goal, and I'm like, okay, now what? And then I need to set the next goal, and hopefully make that a little bit more of a challenge and more fulfilling to get there.
So how often do you set goals? Is it that you do it at the beginning of each year? Do you do it during each quarter? What's your process? You're a banker. Bankers have processes, right? What is your process for goal setting?
Yeah, we come up with an annual budget, and all the components that go into it. And banking is a unique, or okay, we like to think we're unique, or probably not, but banking, we start with our balance sheet versus our income statement, because the way that banks make money is that we lend our deposits. So we always have to look at where our deposits are. And once we can determine where our deposits are and where we want them to go, then we can look at how we're going to increase our assets. For a bank, an asset's a loan, a liability is a deposit, just the opposite of every other business in the world. And and then we look at how we're going to produce revenue, and that's by making loans, and that's by looking at the risk that's involved on those loans that we look at, and figuring out what that risk factor is, pricing it accordingly, and moving forward from there. So when we go through our goal setting process, which we go through at the end of a calendar year before the next calendar year, we set up what we want to look like at the end of the year, and then we set up what we want to look like at the end of the first quarter, at the end of the second quarter, at the end of the third quarter, in order to achieve our year-end goal. And then internally, we also look at what we need to do on a monthly basis to keep moving forward on that. And we look at our processes quite a bit, because we realize that in order for a bank to make money, they need to make loans. And if it takes us, let's say, 20 days to put a loan on the books, we look at ways that we can cut that down to 15 to 10, to some time frame that's shorter than that. And because the faster we can get that loan on our books, the sooner we can start earning money on that. Sorry, I pulled the curtain back on banking.
Well, I'm going to ask you if you pull a curtain back on your personal life. How do you set goals in your personal life? I'll spill the beans. You're a triathlete. You do triathlons. You're married. You have kids. How do you set goals in your personal life?
That I'm not quite as structured in my personal life goals as I am in my business goals, but the goals I set for myself. I kind of compartmentalize where my goals are. So if I'm looking at triathlon, for example, I mark off on the calendar which triathlons I would like to participate in, what the distance of those triathlons are, and then I work backwards on a training schedule for that. And then I look at what my wife has on the calendar for the family, and then try to figure out how I can fit in the appropriate amount of training into still being a good husband, father, family member, and all the rest of that. So it comes down to a lot of time management, and then it comes down to making the decision of what needs to bend and what does not need to bend. And sometimes you have to give up a family event for either work or for training, and sometimes you have to give up training for a family event. And it just comes down to, and you have to be flexible on that. I mean, when I'm in full training mode, I'm training close to 20 hours a week, so it's basically a part-time job. And since I don't golf, that gives me 5 hours on Saturday and Sunday to do training, so that's half of it. So that makes life a little easier when it comes to fitting those things in. And when since you did mention triathlon, I have done 17 Ironman triathlons, and
17.
Yeah, there's something wrong with me.
There is. Tell everybody what those distances are, because the Ironman is an amazing distance.
The distance is a 2.4 mile swim, 112-mile bike, and then a full marathon. So that's 26.2 miles. So that's a full day.
And you do these back to back, right?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, you start with the swim at basically 6 in the morning. Then once you get done with that, you jump on the bike. And then once you get done with that, you lace up your running shoes and go for either a run or a walk, depending upon the day. and then you know, you have 17 hours to finish, or else they turn the lights off at the finish line. So you need to come in, basically before midnight.
And so you've done 17. What's your favorite one so far that you've done?
Um, well, my favorite one is Ironman Coeur d'Alene, which is in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Um, Reason that's my favorite one is A, it was the first one that I've ever done, so I had nothing to compare it to. B, I did it. I've done that one 4 times, and the fourth time I did it was on my 50th birthday, and I had my two brothers, who are, one's 3 years younger than me, the other 6 years younger than me. I convinced them. I told them on my 49th birthday, this is what I was doing. I really wanted them to join me on my 50th birthday, and they both did, and their families did, and so we had a great time out in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. Well, some of us had better times than others, but so and then a lot of people. The next question, which you may or may not ask, but I'll answer anyhow, is what was the most difficult one that you've ever done? And I did Ironman Boulder, which is in Boulder, Colorado, and that one really beat me up um, because of the altitude, and also it was one of the hottest days on record in Boulder when that on the day of that event it was 104. So that one beat me up coming from you know Ohio out to Colorado, but still I finished, and I finished well before the cutoff time.
Yeah, the only thing flat on that course is the water, right?
Yes, yes, we did it. The um all right, this is getting into the weeds, but people think that just because it's the swim would be the easiest, but the reality is when you're running or biking, you can breathe whenever you want. When you're swimming, you can only breathe when your face is out of the water. And when you're in thin altitude, it's finding the it's you. I found that I had to modify my swimming technique a little bit just because of the fact that the air was thinner than what I was used to, which was something I had not anticipated. So between the adrenaline and the thin air, it was the swim was a little bit more difficult than normal.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that. I get it, right? Yeah, yeah, I know how thin the air is there, and grabbing that oxygen. Yeah, that's well, good for you. So, and you put goals in place in order to be able to accomplish that huge task, right? That how many miles is that altogether? 140 something?
140.6. 140.6.
So you have to have goals. You have to set goals. You have to achieve goals, right? You have to have stepping stones in place to hit that.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a big process. I mean, I don't know. Well, I know that you've done a few triathlons, and you know, it's almost as if race day is anticlimactic because you build up to it, and then you know when you get once you get through after that day, you need to decide what your next goal is going to be, and you're at this high fitness level. So how do you carry that forward without without injuring yourself or burning out? So but I mean, I enjoy the. I found as I get older, I enjoy the process sometimes more than the event itself.
So that was going to bring my next question was how do you celebrate those victories, right? And again, the victory may be just getting ready for quote unquote game day or triathlon day, and the triathlon itself is anticlimactic. But how do you celebrate that before you start moving on into the next goal? Or are you that person that you don't celebrate anything? You just, okay, now I got to get better. I got to get faster. I got to get stronger.
Yeah, I don't do a good job at celebrating my success. I mean, the funny thing is, when I got done with um, the first Ironman triathlon that I did, I finished the race. I was on an adrenaline high. I had all the endorphins going, and I said, all right, what can I do next? And uh, I said, okay, I want to do Western States, which is a 100-mile race out in the Sierra Nevadas. Well, the day afterwards, I realized that was a really crazy idea. But I remember telling my wife that. She's like, well, how do you feel? I'm just like, I think I can do Western States. And she's like, you don't even like running. I'm like, I know, but I know it's something I could do. But then, like I said, a couple of days later, I realized that was probably not a wise. That was not the right move, the right thought. But I just thought it was interesting that that's how I wanted to celebrate the first triathlon that I did. And there were several years that I did 2 Ironman triathlons in one season. And one year I did 3 in one season, and that was one too many. But I found that I could, if I uh, if I did a triathlon early in the season, I could do a late season triathlon. I could recover enough that I could still have an enjoyable day. Well, again, that's a warped sense of enjoyment, I realize, but an enjoyable day out on the race course.
All right. So which one are you doing this year?
I don't have anything on my calendar at the moment, but I am ramping up my training right now. I'm swimming about 8,000 yards a week, and riding my bike indoors about 70 miles a week, and then running about 7 miles a month. But that's all in one day.
7 miles a month in one day. All right. You're going to do it once a month, every 30 days, like clockwork, right?
Well, why not? It's mental. Okay, there is a physical component, but it comes down to is how mentally can you take it as you go through that day. I mean, there's a lot of negative talk that goes on in your head when you're in a long distance event like that, and it's how do you manage through that? And that comes from being either incredibly stubborn or practice, and the practice comes from your training. And you have to realize that things aren't going to go perfect. So you have to not worry about things that you can't control and only control what you can control. And I use that same approach at work, is that, no matter what my goal is for the year, and the path I map out as of January 1, that's not the path that it's going to end up being. There's going to be a lot of branches on that, and you're going to have to pivot, and you're going to have to move forward. And, you just can't dwell on what didn't go right. You have to dwell on what is going to go right.
Yeah, I love that thought. A lot of times people just, throw up their arms and they give up, and they don't do the pivoting. They don't do what's necessary to see, well, what part of this can I achieve? So I love that whole concept there, that things are going to go wrong, right? We don't control everything.
Right. Yeah. I mean, that's one of the things I find, that one of the conversations I have with my team quite a bit, is that, yes, this is what our plan was, and this was the steps that we had planned to get there, but it's not working out that way. So we need to figure out what's working, what's not working, and then choose the path that's working, and go from there, and make sure that if we choose a different route to get to the same destination, that it's going to end us up at the same destination.
Yeah. So I'm looking at it like this, from the triathlon standpoint. And I think we can draw analogies or metaphors to business and to regular life. When you start out on the bike in the triathlon, you're not expecting to get a flat tire, but the probability to get a flat tire exists, right? And then when the flat tire happens, then you have to adjust, and you have to change some of what you're doing, right? It's not just a give up. You don't just put the bike on your back and walk home.
Well, you could, but that's going to be a really long walk, depending upon where that happens. But yes, I mean, you have to, I mean, you have to make sure that your equipment's in good shape before you start the day. Much like when you're at work, you need to make sure your head's in the right place. And you need to rely on the fact that you're prepared, and that, okay, if you get a flat tire, you have a spare with you. If you get two flat tires, well, then then you have a different problem. But you don't think about getting two flat tires. You don't even think about getting one flat tire. I mean, I never plan to get a flat tire. I plan to do something if I do get a flat tire, but I don't plan to have a flat tire. And um, I've been in situations or I've been in races where I have gotten a flat tire. And okay, and so instead of being, instead of my time goal of, 5.5 hours, my time goal becomes, okay, it's going to be 5.5 hours plus. I know I can change a tire in 12 minutes. I know I can change a tire in 7 minutes. I know I can change a tire in 20 minutes. Depends upon, you know, how things are going. But so I know that, okay, so all of a sudden this 5.5 hour goal becomes a 6 hour goal. So then it's just recalibrating the thought process that, okay, so that's another half an hour. My goal to finish the race in 12 hours and 15 minutes now became 12 hours and 45 minutes. So it's just adjusting from there, because I know I can't make up a half an hour on a run in a marathon.
Yeah,
I would
that's
like
tough.
to be able to. I guess if I jumped in a car, I could, but that would be cheating.
It would be. All right, let's core values. Do you have a list of core values? And if you do, what are those?
Core values that I have, are honesty. You got to be honest with yourself. You got to be honest with your team. You got to be honest with your family. And the other one of the other core values I have is being focused on whatever goals that you set, and that knowing where you want to go, and knowing that the path to get there is going to be winding and not a straight line. I don't know if that's a core value, but if you know where you want to go, you can get there. If you don't know where you want to go, any path will get you there. I think that's what some philosopher said at some point in time. But you have to know where you want to be. You have to know where you are. You have to know your starting point. You have to know your ending point, and the journey in between is the most exciting part of it.
Yeah, that journey. Too many people don't focus on the journey. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I agree. I mean, it's like I said. I mean, I enjoy the process more than I sometimes enjoy the end goal. I mean, one of the other things I like to do is fly fish. I mean, fly fishing is probably one of the dumbest sports in the world. I mean, you're throwing a hook with feathers and fur tied to it. There's no meat on it. So I mean, you're trying to fool a fish to bite into something that's not that you as a human think looks natural to the fish. And you know, and you're repeating the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. So fly fishing probably could be the definition of insanity. But the whole process of going through all that and then trying to outthink a fish is I find that to be pretty fun. I mean, but okay, again, I have a warped sense of fun. I mean, I know I could catch a lot more fish if I threw a worm on the hook.
Well, so here's what I'm doing. I'm listening to you, right? And you do these Ironman triathlons. You put the time and effort and energy that you need to in order to train for them. And we're battling the thoughts or the demons, whatever you want to consider them, in our mind, right? And we're by ourselves on the road. Thoughts are going through our mind. And then another form of relaxation, or your form of relaxation, is fly fishing. Again, the same thing, right? You're just out there by yourself. You're having those conversations in your mind. I think you like those conversations in your mind. That's what I think.
Well, at least I know someone's listening to me.
Oh my goodness.
But one of the things that I've learned over time is that, when you're going through, when you're having all those conversations in your head, that, the one that I come up on quite a bit when I'm either fly fishing or doing triathlon, or, something isn't going right, is, why don't you just quit? And what goes through my mind at that point in time is that, would anybody really care if you quit fly fishing? Would anybody really care if you dropped out of a race? Reality is probably no, but you as an individual would care. And I look at it, is that something I can live with? So, do I want to, no matter how bad I feel in a race, do I want to quit knowing that I'd feel better as soon as I stop? But then every day I'd have to, in my mind, every day I'd look in the mirror and say, boy, you quit that race. Why'd you quit that? So, and there's always good excuses, but that's what they are, is an excuse. And excuses are, you know, some, I'm a person that just doesn't like excuses. I mean, I like results, even if the results aren't what I expected at the beginning of the day. Um, but figure I can learn from those types of things. And that's a success right there. I may not hit the results that I want, but if I learn something to get to a result that's similar to what I want, then I feel that that's a success.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Um,
failure is not learning anything from when things go wrong.
so you answered two questions right there. You defined success, and you talked about what's your definition of failure. Good. What about what about your plan for personal growth? Do, do you have one? What do you do?
My plan for personal growth is, you won't believe this one, but it's to do everything harder. Is that you always have 10% more to give. And, no matter how successful you are, there's always another level, to get to. And for personal growth, you need to look at what got you to where you are, and realize that, you could do one of two things. You could repeat what you're doing, and but you're eventually, I mean, I found this out as, I mean, I started a lot of things in my life come back to triathlon. I found it out as I got older, I can't train the same way I did when I was, or 10 years ago. So, I had to adjust my training. And, I thought, well, why can't I just still think I can train the way I did 10 years ago? Well, because I'm older, things hurt more, things don't hurt less sooner than they did before. So, it's okay. You have to adapt, and, maybe I can't put in the long miles that I put in before. Maybe I need to work on strength training more than I did before. And, you know, so you always have to adjust as to the situation. And if you like I said, if you keep doing the same thing, you're not going to evolve. You're going to have to, look at the situation and make changes, um, in order to get to the goals that you want to get. I mean, my goals are still there. They may be, but the path I'm going onto those to get to those goals is different than it was 10 years ago.
There you
That
go.
looked like it really confused everybody.
No, I think that that's a great way to capture what the plan for personal growth is, right? Thinking that you can. I like that whole thought, right? And I do the same thing in my training, right? I'll go out and try to do what I did 20 years ago, and then I can't walk for 2 weeks and wonder why I can't walk for 2 weeks. Well, that's because I'm almost 60 years old, and I'm not very bright, and I'm not 40, right? So, and if we put that into our plan for personal growth, right? How do we become better today, so that we can also work to be better tomorrow, right? And if we're planning for a race, and I put all my energy forward today, I may not be able to work out for another 3, 4, 5 days. How is that helping me, right?
Right. Well, and it comes back to the, being a leader of our organization, is you have to evolve, or the organization is gonna become extinct. I mean, because everybody else, all your competitors and everyone else, out there is evolving as well. So you have to evolve, or because if you don't, you'll be extinct and you won't be around.
That's right.
And in banking, and like most businesses, everybody gets into a comfort zone, and you have to keep pushing yourself out of that comfort zone. And change is difficult. And I found that, okay, I'm throwing a lot of cliches out there, but I found that um, a lot of people, there's two things that most people don't like. One is the way things are, and the other's change. And it's up to the leader to thread that needle to get people to evolve over a period of time. And sometimes that period of time is really short, and sometimes that period of time it can be stretched out. And it's up to the leader to determine where to step on the gas and where to feather it.
All right, we're running out of time here, so I'm gonna take a minute or two and just thank my sponsors one more time, and then I'm gonna ask you a final question. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna throw into your lap, and you can take as long as you want, and I'll read it to you. A quote that you sent me last week from Jack London, right? The proper function of man is to live, not to exist. I shall not waste my days in trying to prolong them. I shall use my time. So when I'm done, throw it back over to you. And I want you to elaborate a little bit on what you think Jack London means and how that fits into your life, your personal life, and your business life. So I'll be back with you in a second.
Bob, I should have I should have taken some more liberal arts classes if you're going to do that to me.
I took plenty for both of us. So. All right. So again, I want to thank my sponsors. First of all, BCT Alarms, Brian Jankowski, 877-215-0763. Brian does home security. Brian does fire alarms. If you have an organization, if you have a business and you need fire alarms, he does that as well. So give Brian a call. And thanks to WOBL AM 1320 and 107.7 FM. And WDLW AM 1380 and 98.9 FM. Gary and Renee Talat over there. We really appreciate your help. So there you go, Ben. You're the one you sent the quote to me. I got to think about it for the last, 3 or 4 days. I'm thinking, how am I going to get this thing on my wall? I love it. I think it's a great quote. So talk to me about it.
The funny thing is I was watching a movie, and it was the and there was a eulogy, and that was what the person said about the person that had passed away. And I said, they didn't attribute who that quote was to, so of course I had to Google whatever parts of it I could remember, and then I found the quote, and I just thought that was just a fabulous quote from Jack London. That the purpose is to live your life. I mean, you need to live your life. You don't need to exist. Existence is boring. I mean, you need to stay in the moment. You need to enjoy the things that you're doing, and if you're not enjoying the things that you're doing, you need to reassess your life of why that is. And because if you're doing things just to go through the motions, well, I mean, I suppose for me, that's not an acceptable way to live. I mean, I suppose there are people out there that's okay for them, but to me, I mean, all right, I won't be vulgar, but you just need to grab life and enjoy it. And life is hard, but hard is good. I mean, if it was easy, anybody'd do it. Also, I mean, everything is hard until it becomes easy. So, get out there, live your life, don't exist. Go out there and just don't mark time. Just go out and do what you want to do, and figure out what that is, and then enjoy it. And if it's a path you don't like, then take a different path. But you need to decide. Everyone needs to decide for themselves, for for their personal life, what they want to achieve and what they want to be remembered by, and how they want to be remembered. I've read somewhere is, what would it say on your tombstone? I don't know. I haven't gotten to that point yet, but hopefully I'll come up with something that's fun. I mean, I was down in several years ago. I was in Key West, and if you go through the cemetery at Key West, there's some great sayings on tombstones down there. Some of them are very inappropriate, and I would not use on this in this venue, but some people must have had a great life, or at least people viewed them of having a great and fun life. And that's so. Long story short, life is short. Live it to the fullest. Don't mark time. If something's boring, you got to make the decision whether you want to stay in that situation or not.
I absolutely love it. And that was James Bond movie you were saying, right? That's
right.
James Bond movie. But all right. So Ben, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast, Life of Leadership in Lorain County. Thank you so much for your time. Thank you so much for what you're doing in the community, because you're helping the community grow. You're laboring to help businesses, and keeping those businesses around and raising leaders organically is what's going to continue to help us in our county grow strong. So thank you for everything that you're doing.
All right, Bob, thanks again for inviting me to be part of Life of Leadership. Also, I'll thank your sponsors, BCT Alarm and WOBL, WDLW. Thanks for letting Bob put this on out there. Hopefully, everybody or whoever listens, or all the people that listen to this, get something out of it. And if not, that's okay also. But and if anybody needs or wants to talk about banking, or I'm going to have to throw in a shameless plug for myself, so or for the bank. But
absolutely,
Buckeye Community Bank's here to help small and medium-sized businesses succeed. We'd love to talk to anybody, and we have a great team here that will help the small and medium-sized business be successful, and help the communities that we live in survive and thrive.
Thanks so much, Ben. Appreciate your time.
All right. Thanks, Bob.